Have you recently been injured and you're wondering how to adjust your plan for your big goal race? And you're afraid that you won't get to the start or finish line? That is what Saundra thought when she got injured after training for her first chance at the New York City Marathon after trying to get in for 11 years. She got her shot and she didn't want to miss it. So if you've had plantar fasciitis or you've been told that you just need to stop running if you have an injury that pops up, or maybe you had surgery and you're training for your first marathon back, then you will need to listen to Saundra's inspiring story on how she was not only able to run the New York City Marathon, but then knock off a couple other states for her 50 state goal of half marathons and finish the epic and exhilarating Big Sur Marathon. I have had the pleasure to witness Saundra's transformation firsthand as her running physical therapist and coach through our Spark Healthy Runner signature coaching program. And Saundra, like so many of the clients that I'm fortunate enough to work with, is exactly why I am passionate about what I do today. So thank you for agreeing to share your story and your experience working together and making some amazing memories in New York, Arizona, and at Big Sur. Welcome to the show, Saundra.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you jumping on to share your story. And if you're a runner listening to this right now and you're currently battling an injury that has really forced you to stop running, it is my hope that this really provides you some inspiration and that it's really possible to overcome some of the common running related injuries that we get. And you can be able to get back to the thing that you love to do, which is running. And I know it's like scary. I know you could feel defeated. And if you're anything like Saundra, then you probably have already tried stopping running for a period of time. Maybe you skipped your 16-mile long run, or you went to a chiropractor, you went to rehab, you saw a podiatrist, you tried orthotics. Heck, you might have even, hired a run coach, but like the pain always seems to come back, or you can't get back to what you really were prior to your injury. And these fears and obstacles are normal. And I'm here to tell you, they can be overcome. And Saundra is just one of our Spark winners from our Healthy Runner coaching program, who has been able to accomplish some really amazing things with her running, her health. And I'm sure her story and some of the tips that she'll share with you today will be helpful if you're struggling with a similar issue. So, Saundra, if you can just start out by kind of before we started working together, if you don't mind, just diving into the scenario that you were facing, where your running was at before we met.
Yeah, of course. I had been an avid runner, but doing everything on my own. I would look up training plans online, try to rearrange them by myself. And I would do lots and lots of races. I really love doing races. I was doing multiple marathons and half marathons a year. I ended up injured and needed a tendon surgery. So I had had a peroneal brevis tendon repair surgery that made it so I couldn't run for pretty much a year. Right before my surgery, though, I had gained entry to the New York City Marathon. So I was so concerned about whether or not I would be able to recover in time to run this marathon. That was my huge goal. My surgeon said, if things went as planned, I should be ready to go. So I did a lot of physical therapy after surgery, and things were going pretty well. And it seemed like I would be able to meet my goal of running the race. So I was in the middle of my training plan that I found online, and was amping up my mileage for New York, and started having some pain. And I was listening to your podcast actually while I was running, and was listening to the stories of other runners that you had helped. And I think I can't remember when we first met, but I think it was October. And, New York is in November. It might have been late September when I reached out to
Right.
you.
It was, I
But
think, around 6 weeks
it was like
before,
6
I
weeks
feel like.
prior to the
Yeah.
marathon. Yeah. And I was having some pretty bad back pain. And at that time. And I really didn't think I would be able to accomplish this goal. I had tried, like Dwayne mentioned, I had tried for 11 years through the lottery to get into New York City Marathon, and every time was denied. And then when COVID happened, they did the virtual marathon, and the first 1,000 entries into the virtual race, if you finished the race and submitted, your accomplishment, then you could get guaranteed entry when it returned. And so that's how I got my entry. Which was really hard to do a virtual marathon around my neighborhood, and then to work so hard after surgery, to see that so close, and then to think I wasn't going to be able to finish it. I was just so devastated. So I reached out to Dwayne, and you were so just encouraging and hopeful and willing to take on, my case there that close to the race, and said, we can do this, we can work on this. And you were just hopeful. So we started working together, but honestly, my back cleared up right away. And I developed plantar fasciitis on my 18 miler, like with just a few weeks to go. And I couldn't believe it. I was just like, how is this happening? So again, I, was then a coaching client, and texted Dwayne and said, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe this is happening." And once again, you came like right to the rescue, and brought some exercises I'd never heard of before, and just told me what to do. And we came up with a plan to get me to race day. And it wasn't the race that I thought I was going to have, as far as like time or anything, but I was able to complete the race, and I was shocked to be able to do it. And it was so much fun. It was literally like, I tell people it's like one of the best days of my entire life. It was just so exhilarating, and just the most fun marathon I've ever experienced. It's just fabulous. So I can't believe I was able to do it, honestly.
Yeah, so you definitely had a great New York City experience, and even going to see Hamilton the night before, which I was like, that is
Yes.
epic. Like, that is an epic way to do the New York City marathon. But if we could, just to kind of recap here, so you frequent marathoner. You've run many marathons before. I know you did like the Dopey Challenge. I remember when I was doing that, you were giving me some tips before that, and Disney races. But you really had this ankle surgery. It's basically like an ankle reconstruction surgery, if anyone's like wondering, like a stabilization surgery for those that typically have like chronic ankle sprains. So you had this ankle surgery, you did your PT, you did your rehab, and then you had this back injury that kind of popped into the story. And I do remember when you reached out, because and I frequently get runners who will reach out with, I don't know, a week, a month, 2 months before their race. And typically, in order to really see any significant transformation in someone's running, which is like the impact that I want to have, it is going to take like 4 months. So I usually don't take on runners that close. And I remember being quite clear with you and being like, listen, I can certainly help you get rid of this back pain, get you to the start line, but we're going to work on really establishing the foundation, and really making all the things that you need to be like a stronger runner after the surgery. And this is quite common. Like, a lot of people who have surgeries, if you don't fully, not even so much rehab that tissue, but the body, and like restore it back to its like fundamental running movement patterns, then there's compensations, and we start to see other injuries pop up. So like, I kind of knew that in your story, and I was like, all right, like, I'll definitely be able to help her, but like, I want to make sure that like she's good to go for the future. And then you had mentioned that you had already like Big Sur lined up. I'm like, okay, all right, we're going to do this. Like, I'm going to get you to New York. Like, you're going to be able to run New York. You've been trying to get in this thing for 11 years. And then we're going to really work on like developing that strong foundation along the way. So I guess my first question there, before you kind of talk about finishing New York, is, were there any hesitations about like getting going with the program at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a couple. Of course, like, I don't know if there's other runners out there like me. I'm sure there probably are, but I like to control my schedule. I was nervous about putting my running in someone else's hands because I'm just like that person that wants to like figure it all out myself. And I was really nervous about, I'd always done my own training plan and I always knew like I wanted this here and I wanted that there. And I knew how I wanted it. So I was really nervous about handing that over to someone else. And I can't say what a stress relief that was. Once I let go of that and handed it over to Coach Dwayne, like it took so much off my plate and in the mental capacity of not having to do that anymore and being able just to say to him, like, this is going on in my life, or this is what's hurting, or this is how I feel after this run. And for him to be able to say, well, this is how much you need to run, or I'm going to move this here, or I'm going to take this off and it's okay. And to trust him in that. It was a huge step for me to trust him with my running, but the decisions that he made were so right. So I would say that that was really, really hard for me. And then also, you know, it's always the monetary thing, you know, to pay for the coaching, but it was worth every penny of it, like to be able to accomplish my goals and to be able to start to feel better and to feel stronger was well worth it. I have never done strength training like this throughout my training plans before or prioritized it. I've done like a little here and there. I've always gone to PT because I'm always injured. And so to be able to be discharged from PT, I haven't needed PT for the last several months, and to be able to strength train correctly and learn new appropriate ways to strength train, and also where to put the strength training within my running plan has really been helpful.
Yeah, and I think you bring up such a good point because, yeah, I'm sure pretty much 99% of our audience really related to you about being a control freak. Because as runners, I feel like a lot of times we're that way. So if anyone could relate to that, and I think it's probably some of your teaching background as well, right? You like to have everything organized and structured and plan it out ahead of time, right? Like have your lesson plan and have your run plan like all set for you. But I think you also brought up another point is that when we do that, sometimes we miss our blind spots. And so not only from a offloading like the cognitive workload for you, which I have found even personally for myself, since I invested in coaching for the past 3 or 4 years now, that's been like wonderful that even though I can, right, like build my plans and do what I need to do, just not having to worry about that is just tremendous. And then being able to miss my own blind spots, right, in my training. And I remember when we had started and when what really kind of caused some of this initial plantar fasciitis pain that you had was that you were like stacking mileage and like not accounting for if there was a change in your schedule, that you would like make up those miles and you would be running like 5 or 6 days in a row. And then you ran, I think was it the 16 miler or is it 18 miler? And then that's when the foot pain started.
It was the 18 miler, yes. And I actually had like such a great run that day. I had my 18 miler. It was a fantastic run, but it was a day of like a really big craft show that we have here in our community, like a big furniture, arts and crafts event, and my family was in town. And so I ran that long run really early in the morning so I could then be on my feet all day at the craft event. And so in addition to that, though, I, had all the other runs like in front and behind it. And because we had just started working together, I was using like my plan. We hadn't like switched over yet. And so yes, everything was stacked together. And then after that run, it was at the very end of that run, I started to have just a tiny bit of heel pain. It felt like a bruise on my heel. I didn't recognize it because I'd never had plantar fasciitis before. And then I promptly went to the craft fair and walked around for about 5 or 6 hours. And after that, I had full blown plantar fasciitis that lasted, throughout the rest of my training cycle. And I had to do the New York City Marathon with it, and it lasted afterwards as well. So it took some time to deal with it, but I was thankful you knew what to do. Yeah. You're
Yeah,
exactly
and that was definitely something where we had to like piece things together and like modify your plan and think about like how are we going to get you to the start line, right, of the race
right.
so you can actually, complete it. And prior to all of this, you had never utilized like a walk run strategy, correct?
Um, I had it when I first started running, but I wasn't using walk run with
Okay.
this training cycle at all. Yeah, I was running this particular marathon. I was training with just all running, which maybe wasn't my best idea post surgery. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, and in hindsight, right, like we could be like, well, maybe we should have started there. And then I would argue, like starting with a lot of the strength exercises that we started working on would have been helpful in the beginning to like bridge that gap from like PT or rehab to running, right? And that's where I see a big gap right out there in patients getting discharged from PT because their pain is better or that problem, that tissue is healed or your ankle strength is good, but we haven't actually restored all of the lower body like strength that you need to actually like start training for a marathon now, right? Like that's where
Absolutely.
that gap is. So getting that strength up, I think would be super helpful. But yeah, we did need to kind of, and I don't know if you remember that conversation that we had when I was like, you know what, like we need to be realistic about this, like based upon your pain levels, based upon your tissue irritability, we were really, I remember us like really messaging each other frequently on
Yeah.
how the foot was doing, and saying, okay, I think we need to like shift gears here and go to a walk run strategy for the race. So then we
Right.
started like practicing that like in your training runs before that. So, you were used to that, right? And it allowed the tissue to kind of heal and feel a little bit better.
Yes, absolutely. It definitely did. Because after that 18, I remember that was my last long run for the marathon. We decided we couldn't risk another long run. And so leading up to it, we did some pool running and then we did some short runs to practice that strategy. Yeah, just like you remember. And so for the race, we did, if I remember correctly, we did a really conservative strategy. I'm trying to remember the ratio, but I want to say it was like a 1 and 1, or it might have been a 1 minute run, 1 minute walk at first. And then once we got to the halfway point or even the 20 miler point, then we increased it if I was feeling okay, which I did. I felt
Right.
great. And so I was able to bump it up and I did the second part faster. But the whole point was just finish, be able to finish without it blowing up. Because I remember the pain was so, it was still really intense that I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to handle the pain throughout the race. But you encouraged me like so much, just that I would be able to do it, just to go give it a shot. And I just appreciated the encouragement and the strategies and definitely like the foot exercises. I really feel like the way that we were able to rehab it in I think it was like 3 weeks leading up to the race made such a huge difference that I don't think I would have even tried it otherwise had I not had those tips or strategies. I would have just felt like I needed to withdraw. Because with New York City, you can defer all the way up to the night before the race. And so I really think I would have done that. I'm just like still amazed that it turned out to be such a fantastic day. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you got that opportunity to experience everything that New York has to offer, and it is an iconic marathon, and I just loved hearing like your recap of it, and just being able to experience the crowd, the energy, right, and be able to actually like finish it running and not like hobbling through
Yeah.
the finish line.
Yeah. Those last couple of miles felt like so good. It was just so great. It was so, so fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And so so after New York, then, the goal was to kind of get the foot healthy and, start training for Big Sur, which was something that you already, invested in. It was like, this is what was I guess, do you mind just sharing kind of what was the reasoning behind Big Sur?
Yeah, of course. So, I lost my late husband in January of 2019. And, he had been in the Air Force before we met. But when he was in the Air Force, he was a linguist, a Korean linguist, and he had gone to language school out there in Monterey. And it's called DLI, and he used to talk about that area all the time. He would just tell me, like, oh my gosh, Saundra, it's so beautiful. And he used to run in Carmel and along the bay there. And he would tell me about the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And he used to say, oh my gosh, they have this kelp forest that's so beautiful. And he would say, like, I would run 5 miles a day there. And that's where I fell in love with running. And he and I used to run together all the time. Like the majority of our Disney races, we ran together. And we ran our first marathon together. And, obviously, like his last marathon, we ran that together. And so just a lot of my running was with him. And we used to talk about visiting there together. And when I learned about Big Sur being in that area, it just seemed like such a special place and such a neat way to experience a place that he loved and a way to run, where he used to love to run. So it was just so neat to have the opportunity to go. And once again, this is a marathon that you cannot get into. And so, I had tried, I can't remember how many times, but multiple times to get into the race via the lottery. Even when my late husband, Mike, was alive, I would try and never got in through the lottery. And so I had this faulty thinking, and this is before I met you, Coach Dwayne, but I had this thinking that oh, I'll run the New York City Marathon and I'll be so trained and fit and ready to go. And so I'll just on the tail end of that, I'll run Big Sur, because I actually have been intimidated, by Big Sur, because you hear about how challenging it is and how it is, so I'm not that fast of a runner, and the time limit and the challenge of the race had always intimidated me. So I put my name in the lottery, but I knew I probably wouldn't make it. So it never really, it was fine. It wasn't that much of a threat to try, but I knew I could register through marathon tours and likely get in. And I had been holding off because I was intimidated by it. But I thought, well, I'm not getting any younger, so I'm only going to get slower, most likely. And I'll be so fit after New York, I'll go ahead and run it right afterwards. So I went ahead and registered through Marathon Tours thinking, this is surely the year to do it. So yeah, that's how it came about that I was registered for Big Sur this year. And meanwhile, I'm having these injuries and difficulties due to the muscle imbalances from my surgery and not strength training and, running 5 and 6 days in a row. And so I'm registered for Big Sur, and it's non-refundable. And I'm asking Coach Dwayne, oh my gosh, what have I done? And can we be ready for this? Should I just take the cut and, not put any more money towards it because it's non-refundable? Should I just lose my deposit? And so we were kind of sitting in that place. Yeah. And once again, he's very
So for those that don't know, Big Sur is just like epic views. Basically, you're on like the edge, essentially, right? Like of the U.S. and you're overlooking the shore. There's these huge hills. I think looking at your final Sur, it was like 1,700 feet of elevation, right? That you did in total throughout the whole course. So apparently the views are epic, right? So that's why it's hard to get into this marathon, where a lot of people say it's like the most beautiful one in the U.S. At least I've heard. I don't know if you've heard any others that are more gorgeous than that, but so it's hard to get in. You wind up signing up. you're committed, and you're like, you have your strong why, and to honor Mike, your late husband, and really your comeback from your surgery, right, that you had, and getting back into running. So going through that training for Big Sur, was there anything like you learned about yourself, or any lessons to kind of share of really doing some hard things, right? Like the race itself was hard. We just talked about that on our coaching call. But, was there anything like you learned about yourself during that process?
Yeah, I would say, I remember our first coaching call when marathon training was starting for Big Sur, and I was like, not really motivated to train for a marathon right now, and I was like, oh no, like, how's this going to go down? I really, really wasn't motivated to get right back out there and train again for those really long runs, it was super cool. My husband now, Ron, he is so great. He was like, I'm going to support you in this. And, he's not a marathoner. He has ran one other marathon, but he doesn't love it. His ideal distance, he says, is 10 miles. And he likes to go out and run like 2 miles a day, and he's good. But he said, I really want to support you, and I'm going to run this with you. And so he was so great to do that. And some of our long runs we were able to do together. But I just really learned that, like, I do have the resilience, like, in me to go out there and do it. Like, I'm not a quitter, I don't give up. And it was really cool. Like, you had me listen to those two books, that Endure and the Do Hard Things book. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
they were really helpful, and just to like dig in, and it's hard to explain, but it was really helpful. And just to go out there and just to do it when you don't want to, it's good for you. I don't know. I think it teaches me a lot about determination and just resilience and perseverance. And I think it carries over into other things in life. And it was really good. And to go after something, I don't know, even when I didn't want to do it, it turned out to be really worth it. It was really good. So I don't know if I answered your question very well, but
Yeah, no, you did. And you talked about like the passing of your husband, but like I know there's been other personal things that you've overcome in your journey. And I think that was like, I actually remember our first onboarding call, and you kind of shared a lot of information that you kind of added. And it was really good though for me to know that, honestly, because I knew like where you were coming from, and like what a fighter you are, right? And that you have overcome really hard obstacles. So I
yeah,
would remember, just reminding you of that, right? Frequently throughout the training
yeah,
when, things were getting tough, and we definitely modified things along the way when kind of some aches and pains would, pop up from
yeah.
here and there. But,
Yeah, knowing to
I
trust
think,
the process. Yeah. And like, one thing, I can share that I also really learned about, I don't know, just about the whole thing. Like, I connected with Brooke, the nutritionist, and
yeah.
due to the loss of my late husband and just the circumstances surrounding that, I in the past had had a trauma-induced anorexia that I, am weight restored and had to overcome that. But during this marathon training, I worked with her on nutrition and like fueling for marathoning. And I had to really trust her, because she was like, you need this much carb when you're training. And, the person who had had like the trauma induced anorexia was looking at that and saying, well, wait a minute, when I'm running, I'm burning like this many calories, and if I'm taking in that much gel, then that's kind of evening out. Like, wait a minute, like, I'm not really happy with this. And so I had to face some of those things that I really thought like I'd progressed past. And it was really good for me to just take the advice. It's kind of, again, like letting go of the control of my training plan, but I had to do that again with Brooke, and just really trust her, and really like take the gels she told me to take, and drink the electrolytes, and just trust her. And I felt like I felt so much better, and really had like the strength and energy that I needed to complete those long runs. And I just felt so much better at the end. And I just really had to know that, like, I don't always know what's right, and like it's okay to do what someone else is saying, even if it seems scary. It's good to like just trust that advice and go with it. So that is something that I found really helpful.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you started working with Brooke within our program, and yeah, that was super helpful for getting that proper fuel in for the runs. A lot of runners, unfortunately, don't realize how important it is, and even how it relates to like chronic repetitive injuries. So we do see a lot of runners who are getting these chronic repetitive injuries, and one of those contributory factors is that they're not actually fueling enough for their runs and for the recovery of their runs. So their body is kind of constantly in this catabolic state, and it's not really serving the muscles that need to be strong enough to protect the body while we're running. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for bringing that up. In kind of getting over that plantar fasciitis experience journey, do you have any recommendations for someone who is struggling with a similar running injury?
Oh, definitely. I really think that the short foot exercise that you have, I don't know if you have a link for that somewhere that you could, link into this. That was so helpful. I never had even heard of that before. And I really think that, combined with the Naboso ball, that you recommended, like rolling the
Hmm.
foot on the ball, doing those exercises and activating those muscles before I run, really made such a big difference. I mean, my foot cleared up really quickly once we started doing the exercises that you recommended. It was so helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially, and if correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you do have more of a higher arch type, correct?
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
and I do find that in especially for you, those of you with higher arches, just really number one, it's very hard if you've listened to any of my other plantar fasciitis talks, is to stretch the fascia if you have a high arch. It's almost like I find nearly impossible. So you really have to double down on some of like the self myofascial techniques, and then the activation of those kind of short foot muscles. So yeah, I'm glad that was helpful for
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, I also
And
found the recovery slides, the UFOs recovery slides, wearing those,
yeah,
well, like never going barefoot during those flare ups, like making sure I went from my running shoes to the slides, made a big difference.
yeah, nice. Yeah, thank you. And is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you think would be helpful for someone listening to this, kind of going through their journey?
I just want to say, like, if you're on the fence, or, trying to decide if the, running coaching would be helpful to you, that it really is, something that makes a big difference. It helped me so much. And I just think that, like, it takes so much stress and pressure, like, off of yourself. And, it really helped me to accomplish my goals. And Coach Dwayne was so, like, sensitive and there for me when I was going through a lot of different things, either with my body or my life. Just when I text him, he was replying right away, and just such a supportive coaching team. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for sharing kind of this journey that you've been on with New York City and then Big Sur. Like, you've accomplished some huge things. And I'm super proud of you. And honestly, with everything that you've had to overcome, what's next for your running journey? What's next in your future?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm running the Revel Rockies half marathon in June. I think it's June 1st. And then I have another half marathon in September, and I'm looking to run hopefully London, not this year, but maybe next year. So that's on my list for sure. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Maybe
So
this year
checking
again,
off
right?
some more states toward that 50 states, right? I think you said
Yeah,
you're on like
yeah, I definitely
14-ish.
want to run the 50 states half marathon. So I've only done, I think Colorado will be 13, and then in September that'll be my 14th. So I have quite a ways to go, but I've created a list, and I hope to do maybe 3 or 4 a year until I get those done.
Yeah, no, and I look forward to following your journey. Hopefully, the principles and everything that you've learned about strength training in order to run will allow you to stay healthy, right? And also fueling for those runs, and especially those long runs will be super helpful for you. Saundra, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today and your journey. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, and if you are a runner listening to this and this resonates with you and you're ready to take action on really getting accountability that you really deserve to unlock your greatest potential as a runner, like Saundra did, you can get started on next steps and wind up getting stronger, running faster, and becoming a lifelong injury-free runner with our 16-week 101 Healthy Runner Coaching Program. Comes with full support, structure, accountability from our team, just like Saundra got, really personalized to whatever your plans and no matter how structured your schedule is or what races that you have on the calendar. So you can learn more about that by just going to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/coaching or click the link wherever you're listening to this. As always, runners, let's maintain a strong mind, a strong body, and let's just keep on running. Until next time.